A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad to be with you on the program today. We are going to be talking with Pete Brownell, head of Brownell's, here in just a couple of minutes. But we do have a couple of other things to get to before we kick off our conversation with Pete, including this. Economists warned that massive tax hikes could devastate your IRA and 401k account as the stock market braces for impact. With inflation on the rise and global uncertainty looming, it is clear why central banks and savvy Americans are turning to gold. If you haven't had your eye on gold, time to make it a priority. Priority Gold. Trust their team of proven professionals to help you diversify your savings with gold and silver. Call 1-800-405-GOLD or visit prioritygold.com/golden for a free gold info guide. Plus, see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Experts agree that physical gold is one of the best ways to fortify your savings, no matter the economic climate. Act now to get your portfolio working for you while the market is golden. Call 1-800-405-GOLD to speak with a gold specialist or visit prioritygold.com/golden to learn more. That's 1-800-405-GOLD. All right, so there's a lot going on in the world of the Second Amendment. We have the Supreme Court releasing more opinions later this week, including what is likely to be the Rahimi decision. That could come down either Thursday or Friday. Now, it is possible that Rahimi doesn't come out this week. The court still has, I believe, over 20 decisions left in this term, so it is possible that the release of opinions could stretch out into early July. Now, they may end up doing a opinion dump on Thursday and Friday this week. They've been releasing maybe 2-3 opinions a day when they release their opinions, which has typically been just one day a week over the last few weeks. So you can see those numbers grow. But again, we don't know for sure when Rahimi is coming down. We just know it is going to come down before the end of this term. We wrote at Bearing Arms yesterday about the concurring opinion offered by Justice Amy Coney Barrett in a case dealing with a trademark case in which Justice Barrett seemed to take issue with using tradition to decide whether or not this trademark law had been violated. And a lot of folks are seeing this as a shot that Barrett is taking at Justice Clarence Thomas in the history text tradition test that was laid out in Bruin, a test, by the way, that Amy Coney Barrett adopted. So there are some sort of behind-the-scene machinations. Obviously, we want to know what the Rahimi decision actually says, but there's also the possibility that the decision could hint at a split on the conservative wing of the court when it comes to the test that is used to determine the constitutionality of gun laws. Also saw the Senate reject unanimous consent to ban bump stocks yesterday, which I mean, look, Chuck Schumer knew that was going to happen. He called the vote. He thinks that this is a political hot potato for Republicans. We'll see what happens next. They could always bring the Bump Act up, for a roll call vote, and they may very well do that between now and November, although I suspect that Chuck Schumer will wait until there is a high-profile shooting of some sort where he believes he can make the most political hay out of a vote. So we're watching those issues. We're also watching what's going on in lower courts around the country. A couple of days ago, we reported on a good decision regarding the ATF's rule about who's engaged in the business. A federal judge in Texas granted an injunction against that law for the named plaintiffs in that case. So that injunction does not apply nationwide, but it does apply to the state attorney generals or the states where attorney generals have challenged the ATF rule in this particular lawsuit, as well as the members of groups like the Virginia Citizens Defense League and the Tennessee Firearms Association. As I said, this was a good decision because the ATF rule really did go and does go far beyond even the revised text of the federal statute, which was changed in the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. The left, of course, is taking this with as much aplomb as you might expect, right? Here's the headline from the New Republic. The worst judge ever has entered the gun debate. And I thought to myself when I saw this headline, Roger Taney is speaking from the dead? But no. They are, in fact, talking about the, quote, Trump-appointed federal judge responsible for suspending federal approval for what is that? Mifepristone. I am terrible at pronouncing names, even after 8 years of dealing with my wife's cancer drugs. Anyway, they say the Donald Trump appointed federal judge is back, and he has once again attempted to undermine the authority of a federal agency. Last week, the New Republic writes, Texas Judge Matthew Kacsmaryk issued a preliminary injunction preventing the federal government from enforcing a controversial new rule from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, which expanded the definition of what it means to be engaged in the business as a gun seller. The New Republic says the new rule would require more sellers at gun shows to perform background checks on their buyers, shrinking, but not entirely solving the long-standing quote-unquote gun show loophole that allows gun show vendors to skirt the accountability measures taken by other firearm dealers. Now, that gets it so freaking wrong, it's not even funny. The ATF rule expanded who is engaged in the business of selling firearms or dealing firearms doesn't just apply to gun stores or gun shows, right? It applies to every private seller of a firearm. In fact, according to the ATF, you don't even need to complete a single sale of a firearm to be engaged in the business, as long as you are perhaps offering more than one gun for sale. If you are intending to derive a profit, how big a profit doesn't really matter, maybe as little as a penny, then you are engaged in the business of dealing firearms and you need a federal firearms license under the ATF rule. The problem is that the federal statute still talks about repeatedly engaging in buying and selling firearms, right? Now, they did change during the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. They did change a little bit of the language. So it no longer has to be repeatedly buying and selling firearms for livelihood and profit, right? Now it's just for profit. So you don't have to, make your living repeatedly buying and selling firearms to be engaged in the business. But you do still have to repeatedly engage in buying and selling firearms under the federal statute, something that the ATF, again, has broadly and squarely ignored, which is one of the reasons why the judge in this case granted the injunction. The New Republic says the rule, which went into effect in May, sparked a lawsuit from GOP-led states, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Utah, as well as one gun owner in Amarillo, Texas, where the New Republic writes, "Would you know it? Kacsmaryk happens to be the only federal judge. As such, any group that files a lawsuit in Amarillo can essentially guarantee that the far-right judge will be the one to hear it, making that district a hotspot for lawsuits from conservative groups." Now, that may be the case, but again, in this particular lawsuit, you do have a plaintiff who lives in the area. You do have the Attorney General of Texas that is a part of this lawsuit. So, you can say that this was judge shopping, but this is a pretty good fit for the judge. This is a pretty good fit for this particular district court, given the nature of the plaintiffs. Now, we know that the New Republic and the left more broadly doesn't like Kacsmaryk's ruling. But if he's the worst judge in history, again, pretty high bar there, then this must have been an egregious opinion, right? The New Republic must be able to find fault with what Kacsmaryk said. No, not so much. They write, in his 22-page ruling, Kacsmaryk wrote that the plaintiffs would likely succeed in their argument that the ATF had overstepped the Administrative Procedures Act by changing the rule without congressional approval, and that expanding the definition of gun sellers put the burden on gun owners to prove innocence rather than the government prove guilt. He enjoined the ruling, meaning that the new ATF rule cannot be enforced in any of the plaintiff states until the lawsuit is revoked. Okay, so what's the problem? The New Republic doesn't like the ruling, but it apparently can't find an argument against the ruling. And by the way, they say that Judge Kacsmaryk, the worst judge ever, he did not go as far as he could have in this case. He again granted this injunction against as it applies to the named plaintiffs, but he did not impose a nationwide injunction on the new ATF rule, which can still be enforced in 46 of the 50 states under Kacsmaryk's ruling, can still be enforced against every gun owner who's not a member of the organizations or residents of the states that sued. So, Judge Kacsmaryk, look, it was a good decision, but he could have gone further. And based on what we just saw the Supreme Court say in Garland versus Cargill, where again the Administrative Procedures Act was invoked to overturn the ATF's rule on bump stocks, I think that Kacsmaryk's on pretty strong footing here when he says that the ATF went beyond its agency authority in essentially crafting new law as opposed to writing a new rule. I think the same is true with the ATF's rule on pistol stabilizing braces. I think the same is true for the ATF's rule on unfinished frames and receivers. This has been a pattern and practice for the agency going back for years now. When they try to adopt a new rule, they are continually asserting authority that belongs to Congress and not to them. Now, again, if you're a gun control advocate, you say, well, that's because look what we just saw in the Senate. Can't get a gun control bill through Congress. Be that as it may, that doesn't, your inability to pass a gun control bill through the legislative process does not give the executive branch the power or authority to start crafting new laws. That's not the way it works. Anyway, I do not believe that Judge Kaczmarek is the worst judge in history. I think the worst judge in U.S. history is long since been buried. But I was kind of amused by the outrageous outrage of the New Republic that really didn't have any substance to it whatsoever. All right, let's turn our attention now to our conversation with Pete Brownell. You know, Brownell is celebrating 85 years this year, and it's pretty incredible. We were just talking last week with the folks from Bordertown Guns and the unfortunate and untimely death of their gun shop in Illinois because of the gun control laws that have been put in place there. Any business that lasts for 85 years, and that's pretty extraordinary. So when I had the opportunity to sit down with Pete for a few minutes on a very hot afternoon, I will say you might notice I begin to glow over the course of the interview and maybe even start dripping sweat a little bit. It was very hot in my office. It was a good conversation. I won't say that, this was a deep investigative dive, but it was. I enjoyed the conversation with Pete, talking again about the history of Brownells, the future of Brownells, and the state of the firearms industry. You know, we've had over 58, 59 months now of 1 million plus gun sales per month, according to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, but those numbers are ticking down, and it is possible that streak comes to an end here in the next few months. The summer is typically the slowest time of the year for the firearms industry. So I thought it was a good opportunity to talk with Pete, too, about just get his take on the state of the firearms industry. Take a look and a listen. Pete, thanks so much for coming on the program. It's good to see you again.
Yep, it's good to be here. Thanks,
Dan. And congratulations on 85 years for Brownells. That is outstanding.
Yep, it's a nice milestone. And, as a family business, the son of the boss or the SOB has to make sure they don't screw it up. So I haven't screwed it up in at least 30 of those 85 years. So it's been a good thing.
Well, you can't have screwed it up too bad, or else we wouldn't be talking about the 85th anniversary of Brownells. So, and in fact, I would say, and I'm sure that a lot of Brownells customers would say that you haven't screwed up at all, that the family business has really grown over the last 85 years, and particularly the last 30 years. Remind folks, what did Brownells start out as 85 years ago? What did Brownells look like when it first began?
It's a great American story of hard work. It started off in my dad's bedroom when he was just a little kid with my grandpa. So it was started in his house selling gun parts and some of the tools that he had made. My grandpa was a gunsmith, and the shop was downtown. And back in the 39, when it all started, it was really hard to get parts and the right kind of tool to get the job done. So we started this whole thing called Bob's Gunsmith Mart, was how we all started. That was our original name. And it was through a lot of the correspondence and friendships he had with the factories. He was a great letter writer, and he would write letters to the owners of those factories. So, Ruger, Senior, Weatherby, he'd write to the Colt factories and ask for parts, extra runs on parts. Because all of his buddies in the gunsmithing world couldn't get a hold of parts. You had to let that gun sit on the rack or in your buddy's back at home, not being fixed. So there was this big need for part supply, get the right tools. It was really just a big hammer and a weird shaped screwdriver back in the day that worked on firearms. So we started to make it really easy for gunsmith buddies to get parts by ordering extra stuff from the factory when they would do a production run of say an 870 or an old 700.
Yeah.
And he just extra couple pairs of springs and sights and levers or anything that his buddies would be writing him about, saying, "Would you get this next time you talk to Bill?" So that's how it all kind of started. And it started as he pushed Dad aside out of the crib, there was room enough for all the little bags and envelopes you would get from both customers and factories. So that's how it all kind of started.
That's pretty amazing. And obviously, I mean, you are still working with gunsmiths, right? I mean, even though you are now dealing directly with consumers, and as far as, finished products, in a way, thanks to the advances of technology, I think it's more common for gun owners to, do these repairs, do these modifications on their own rather than taking it to a gunsmith.
Right. So there's 76,000 FFLs or gun shops that you take out some of the bigger boxes we all know about. There's 76,000 independents, right around that number. That'd be the high water mark. And really about 5,000 or so, which is a static number over the last decade of hardcore gunsmiths that can take that chunk of steel and make it into an action, or that stock that they can cut down a tree and make a wonderful stock. So you go from just reselling to the gunsmith that we all have in our mind, to this person who's back there filing down chunks of metal into actions, and they really have a really good craft, and they're fantastic. So we're trying to, and this has always been the case, professionalize the gunsmithing trade. Last 85 years, that was my father's and grandfather's calling, was to make sure that gunsmiths and do-it-yourselfers and what they call tabletop gunsmith had all the right tools to get the job done, the right knowledge more than anything else, make sure they had the skill set, the knowledge how to tear down, repair, maybe do some diagnostics on a firearm, and then get the right parts to get that firearm safe and operational back in the field. So we see, like you're saying, Cam, the advent of the AR-15 and Glock and the SIG and the modularization of the process of tightening our tolerances has made it pretty easy for other mom and pop shops to accessorize that firearm and make things fit to a normal set of standards versus what it used to be back in all the way up until about the 80s, which was you had to hand fit everything.
Right.
Today, pretty good manufacturing out of the factory, out of the box, which actually really good. So,
you know what? I'm curious. What's your take on the current state of the industry? I mean, obviously, every business and every industry goes through cycles.
Right.
I see the press releases from the National Shooting Sports Foundation every month, another month of million-plus gun sales. I think we're up to 58 or 59 straight months now. But those numbers, they are dipping when you look at year-to-year sales. How do you feel about the state of the industry right now?
So we've seen 8+ decades of this industry and its ups and downs, both political conflicts around the world, bad winters, good winters, which actually impacts industry. Late winter will be a hot summer. It'll be a late winter. We'll have the industry won't kick up this year like it did in the past. So if you take out the spike of COVID and just draw a straight line from 39 to today, it's been a consistent 4 or 5% growth year over year. You'll have, if you could take a shorter windows, even been a steeper climb. Basically, since the end of the Clinton gun ban in the early 2000s, it's been a skyrocketing marketplace. And what you find is we are coming back to that norm. That's that line. Whatever line you're drawing on, we're going to come back. We're already better than the 4% year over year, or that trend line. But we've had this big bump called COVID, and then we have a trough right after COVID that is so standard, and it's almost the speed at which it comes up. It comes down twice as fast, and when all the volume of sales that are above that traditional line, that's what it is below the line. So we're still in that trough for that near the history, which was 10 years, but we're above the standard 4% from like the last 80 years. So it's coming back, and it's coming back to what I would call normal. People have forgotten to come into this industry that we fought hard through the summertime. We fought hard for really about August all the way to April, and it's just following that trend right now. it's not as easy as it was just to have it in stock and, push the marketing piece out there and people would show up and buy it like it was during the pandemic times. So it's just coming back to normal.
Yeah. Does that include the availability of, components, both for ammunition and for firearms themselves? Because, I mean, again, not only do we see that, I called it the great gun run of 2020 when COVID hit, but, again, all the supply chain issues that impacted a variety of industries, certainly impacted the firearms industry as well. Has that all sort of gotten back to normal as well?
Well, so we're still, as an industry, I would say, overstocked right now. This last 2 quarters, we're kind of overstocked in, I would say, finished firearms. A lot of the accessories that have materialized around the AR-15, the SIG, Glock, and the Rugers. Those people are overstocked, and they came into the industry when it was pretty easy in comparison to right now. And those companies are moving through what I would call the industry supply chain snake. And some of them won't make it because they came in under artificial market conditions. And now that that's getting back to normal, it's really tough to compete with the people that have history, size, and brand. So the industry is a little overstocked right now, which is good for retailers. It's going to be a great deal for the people that are buying guns and fixing guns and accessorizing guns. And it's going to come back to a good inventory level, at least for distribution. So we're not got stuff stacked up to the rafters. But also there's some counter-cyclical things that are happening as well. So there is some scarcity starting to materialize in the raw goods that make ammunition for a lot of reasons. So there's this reality that the input costs for gunpowder are going up. The factories haven't passed that on yet. They've been absorbing that price increase that they've been hit with. And that's going to start coming into the industry over the next, really, I think, 12 months, bit by bit. So I think ammunition prices are going to go up. However, a lot of people have how much ammo? Well, I don't want to say it on TV, but sitting in the warehouse and in those garages. So it's one of those things. The price is going to go up. It's not going to be like 2020 or even 2008 when it was really scarce, but it's starting to inch up.
Okay. All right.
I got a couple of things.
Yeah.
Going on.
So what is Brownell's plan to celebrate 85th anniversary? I mean, you talk about this as a good time for retailers, good time for customers. I'm guessing it's got to be a pretty good time for customers of Brownell's too, right? You guys are going to do something to celebrate.
Yeah, we've got a new BRN lines. We've got BRN 180 that's coming out. It's out right now, and it's a builder model. So we try to create things that you can go back in time, nostalgic wise, and make your AR-15 again. Those tight tolerances, the good manufacturing process from a lot of the firearm manufacturers, AR-15 manufacturers, allow us to be able to customize and personalize a firearm. We've chosen to go back in time with some retro ARs. BRN 180 line is a good product for building and customizing AR-15. So we have 3 models coming out over the next really couple of weeks now. We're also taking a look at supply chain. You're saying that the supply chain was a bit stressed. U.S. made tools were hard to come by. So we're going to be releasing a lot of U.S. based revisions of our older tools that we had to sunset because we really couldn't get a U.S. based supply chain. So got a new vise coming out. We have a larger assortment of the proper screwdrivers to use when you're doing some gunsmithing and working on your firearms, and just making sure that everything that's on that bench that you're doing your work on is got some quality tools available, got some entry-level tools, just to make sure that you can get the job done right. And we got a good cadence of new product coming out. Some new packaging. We're celebrating the new packaging. So that sometimes makes a difference. A lot more instructions on it, and trying to combine that with online videos and content we've all got. So people can build with confidence, right? And get out there and personalize that firearm. I think that's what this phase of getting back to normal usually represents, is people are personalizing, they're customizing their firearm. They may not be going out and buying, 2 or 3 in a year. They may be just customizing what they've already got in their well, that's what we really see. They start to customize and personalize the firearms they already have in their gun vault,
Yeah.
and they get out too. So that's what's going on right now.
All right. Well, listen, I know that GunCon 24 is not technically part of the anniversary celebrations because it is held every year, but you've got that coming up at Brownells too, right? When is that's just in a matter of weeks.
It's like, oh my gosh, when is it? Yeah, 3 weeks from right now. So I gotta look it up. I'm actually gone gun con, but that's a great relationship that we've got with those folks. They put on a great show, and um, it's a great gathering of content creators and factories, and just a great community building activity where everybody kind of gets together and they're talking about the state of the industry. Where's it all going at the grassroots level? That's really where the gun con people really live, is because right there in the middle of being a good customer and being a good supplier, and that all comes together at Brownells. I think it's the second time we've had it here, and it's been a fantastic time every time we've had it. And hopefully we'll continue on to support that here as they find good locations across America to go do gun con here on out. So it's been a great relationship.
I mean, it's centrally located, can't get much more central than Iowa. So I would encourage folks to check it out. Last question for you, Pete. I mean, again, you look back at the 85-year history of Brownells. What do you see? I want to ask you to look 85 years into the future. But where do you see Brownells going maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And with all of the changes, again, that you've talked about within the industry, what do you envision for Brownell's future?
We're going to focus on that gunsmith and that gun builder. So, and that's not much change in the last 85. What's changed is the regulatory world we live in, and I would say the ease of doing with manufacturing advancements, the ease at which you can build and customize your firearm in the future. We're going to make it super easy for customers to build a firearm, go to their gunsmith and say, this is kind of the accessories I want. Can you help build me that rifle or that shotgun, accessorize a shotgun? So it's going to be super easy for people to operate through our website. We've had some significant improvements in our website over the last really 6 to 8 weeks, and we should be seeing that become much easier to do searches and builds on our website. We're investing a lot more technology in the future to make it super easy to envision what your firearm could be based upon the adventure you do want to go on. So be it a hunting competition, just improve your shooting at the range and just making it super easy. So that's the next 5 years.
How concerned are you about the political environment making it much harder for us to exercise our Second Amendment rights over the next 5 years?
Well, actually, we're fighting right now on this, what I'm calling it the right to build. Now, there's things that are inching in on do I have the right to build a firearm? And it's not just, like a bump stock or up an arm brace. It's stuff like, are you in the business of being a gunsmith or not? There used to be this rule that if you sell guns and you get 10 or more, it became a primary part of your business, then you had to get a license. Now it's down to 1. So you could be forced to get an FFL just to build 1. So, and there's a case, now that's kind of the far extreme of it, but there's a case going out of New York where they redefined what a firearm is by the state statute, not by the federal statute, but by a state statute. And unfortunately, there was a no-knock warrant issued by the ATF, and the individual that they were entering his house on died in the whole process because he was building at home. So there's some signals to say, hey, let's get normal again, and let's make sure that we can still do gunsmithing, repair work. There's a great skill set to have. It's a great hobby for hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions. And we want to make sure that everybody has a right to build a firearm and go out and exercise their Second Amendment. So access to hunting ranges outside, using our Pittman Robinson tax that we pay with every bullet and every firearm we buy. Make sure it's getting put back into the ground so we can go out and hunt and target practice and use the land that we're essentially helping support. So those types of activities are what we're really fighting for right now.
You know, and it's crazy too. I mean, I live in a rural area. I'm not a farmer myself, but I see the right to repair efforts that are underway, you know, where people want to be able to repair their tractors without having to take it to the John Deere dealership. And that seems to have found, you know, bipartisan traction. The idea that, okay, you bought this product, you should be able to repair it. And yet we've got so much work to do when it comes to the right to build a firearm, which is an inherent part of our right to keep and bear arms. If you've got the right to keep a gun, you've got the right to carry a gun, you have to have the right to acquire a firearm, and that would include the right to build one yourself. But unfortunately, that is still very much falling along partisan lines. Hopefully, we can make some changes there, and your efforts will be successful in maybe persuading some folks that, you know, this is a common sense issue. Well, Pete, again, I appreciate you spending some time with us today. I know that I didn't want to talk about it on the interview itself, but when you get back from your next trip, I want to talk about the work that you're doing with veterans, because this is really something incredible, and I think our audience would really love it. So can you come back in a few weeks?
Yeah. Hopefully I won't be too damaged after
that. All right. Well, we'll plan on that. Good luck, safe travels. Pete Brownell joins us from Brownell, celebrating 85 years of business, and that is indeed something to celebrate. Pete, thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you, Cam. Take care.
My thanks again to Pete for joining us on the program. And we're going to try to have Pete back next month, I think. He's doing a really cool trip. I'm not going to reveal any details. I don't know what is out there, but we're going to talk with him when he gets back from that trip here in a few weeks. Before we get to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report, let's talk about this for a moment. At the heart of our democracy lies a principle that we hold sacred: free speech. It's the cornerstone that supports every freedom we cherish. Yet in today's digital age, discussions about our wealth, our rights, and our future are being silenced or overshadowed in mainstream narratives, leaving many feeling voiceless in conversations that are crucial to our financial independence and security. This is where Wealth Protection Research steps in, armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research is not a financial advisory firm. They're defenders of free speech, committed to giving a voice to the silenced. Wealth Protection Research does tirelessly seek out financial experts, the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of the 2024 election. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 Election Wealth Protection Report that highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into the 2024 election. It contains ideas the mainstream media won't touch, and listeners can get it absolutely free. All you have to do, text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy. If you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, then act now. Text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy of this 2024 Election Protection Report. It's time to widen the scope of what we're told, to hear the ideas the establishment doesn't want you to handle, and to take control of our financial destinies. Text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy. All right, now, today's recidivist report from Washington State, where a Auburn man charged in a shooting death in Seattle. I say man, he's actually a juvenile who's been charged as an adult. And as it turns out, known to local prosecutors and police. According to the King County Medical Examiner's Office, 29-year-old Javonte W. Isidore Danning died from multiple gunshot wounds back on May 25th. Medical Examiner's Office identified his death as a homicide. The man charged in this crime, 18-year-old Caution M. Anderson of Auburn, Washington. Prosecutors filed 3 felony charges against Mr. Anderson, including murder in the second degree, unlawful possession of a firearm in the second degree, and theft of a motor vehicle. Anderson turned 18 on June 15th. He was 17 at the time of the shooting. He has been charged again as an adult. According to eyewitnesses of the scene, the shooting was the result of, quote, baby mama drama. As the Auburn Reporter reports, the investigation of the shooting involved witnesses and involved parties. Law enforcement identified Anderson as a suspect in the shooting, with witnesses and parties stating that Anderson shot Isidore Danning following an argument between Isidore Danning's wife and Anderson's girlfriend Again, one statement from witnesses saying that the shooting occurred over that baby mama drama. Isidore Danning's wife stated that Anderson shot Danning after Danning stepped out of his vehicle to stop a woman from throwing items at a vehicle following a verbal altercation. A involved party related to Anderson stated that Anderson drove away with his vehicle, saying, "I'm not going to jail again," after the party informed Anderson that he planned to call police. According to prosecutors, on the date that Anderson allegedly killed Danning, he was already on active probation in both King County and Pierce County for juvenile felony convictions, which again raises the question, why was Mr. Anderson out on the streets to celebrate his 18th birthday? Again, we're not talking about low-level misdemeanor offenses committed as a juvenile, right? We have multiple felonies that he was convicted of as a juvenile in 2 different jurisdictions, and yet neither of those felonies enough to keep Mr. Anderson behind bars until he turned 18. If that had happened, the shooting would not have taken place. Mr. Danning would be alive today if the shooting was indeed committed by Anderson. But because Anderson was returned to the streets, prosecutors allege that he was free and clear to engage in this murder at a time when arguably he should have been behind bars. All right, today's armed citizen story from New York State, Dutchess County, New York, where a homeowner shot and killed a violent intruder at his residence. This was, I believe, over the weekend, Friday, June 14th. In the town of Malta in Saratoga County, New York. It was at the Northway Estates Mobile Home Park. Sheriff's deputies say that someone called 911 to report a shooting that had taken place inside one of the units. When deputies got there on the scene, they found a man dead from a gunshot wound, nobody else injured. On Monday of this week, investigators said that the deceased man had forced his way into a stranger's home. This was apparently a random attack, didn't know the victim here. Once inside that home, he then attacked the resident, chasing the resident into a bedroom where other occupants were hiding, trying to get away from this guy. One of the residents inside the home then armed himself with a shotgun and fired 2 shots, killing the suspect. Deputies identified the suspect as 49-year-old Kurt Hubbard, who is a resident of the Locust Grove Motel in Malta. The Saratoga County Sheriff's Office hasn't said anything about a potential motive, but he did thank members of the community for coming forward and assisting with the investigation. He said, at the time, the investigation has not revealed any criminal conduct by the resident, who appears to have been defending himself inside of his home from a subject who was not known to him. Said that the investigation is far from over, and that he won't be commenting further until it concludes. But again, at this point, looks to be a pretty clear-cut case of self-defense there in Malta, New York. All right, finally today, our good deed of the day, in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. And I have to thank Simone for sending me an email about this. Simone said, Mr. Edwards, I don't know if you've seen or heard about the event where several people on a freeway saved a man trapped in a car fire, but I'd like to submit this as a potential good deed of the day. I've seen it reported in multiple locations. Thank you for your tireless reporting, says Simone. Well, Simone, thank you for sending this my way, because I actually had not seen this story. And so I definitely appreciate you sending this my way so that we can let other folks know about this incredible incident. This was in Minnesota. You can see there a screenshot of the car on fire on the right side of the screen, and the group of strangers. This wasn't just 1 or 2 people who stopped on the shoulder of the road to help out, right? There were a lot of folks who were driving by on Interstate 94 who saw what happened, pulled over, and I don't want to say they ignored the flames. They were very present and very aware of the flames that were there, but they didn't let that fire stop them from extricating the driver from the wreckage here. Sam Orbovich, 71 years of age, said he was unconscious behind the wheel as his car was on fire, and he woke up as the window on his Honda shattered. He said, I'm alive today because several good Samaritans and professional first responders saved my life. He said it's incredibly heroic when people driving down the highway choose to put themselves at risk by running towards the flames to extract a stranger from a burning car that could explode at any moment. This was during rush hour last Thursday. It's about 6:30 in the evening. Orvich's vehicle swerved to the right on Interstate 94, struck a lamppost and a guardrail, and then burst into flames. Kadir Tola was one of the first people to see what happened and to stop and to try to help. He tried to open the door of the vehicle, but he couldn't. It was blocked by the guardrail. Then a Minnesota DOT worker showed up, was able to break the car window, and at that point, several other folks had shown up. They were able to, try to open those doors, couldn't. Ultimately, were able to pull Orbovich out of the car, feet first. He suffered minor injuries, thankfully, nothing more severe than that. Orbovich is an attorney there in Minnesota, working there for more than 40 years. He said he wasn't surprised to see well-trained professionals step up to save his life, but he said it was touching to see everyday citizens step up too. He said, my family and I are incredibly grateful for these heroes, and I look forward to thanking them all in person. Well, again, in the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing to help a stranger in need. Every one of those good Samaritans who came to the aid of Sam Orbovich there on the shoulder of Interstate 94 in St. Paul, Minnesota. Again, we thank you for your life-saving good deed. And thanks again to Simone for sending that story my way. All right, we will see you back here tomorrow for another edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. We are going to continue the adventures of Pete and Pete. We've got Pete Friselli coming on the program, retired ATF Assistant Director. Boy, we got a lot to talk about with Pete, from the bump stock ban to the engaged in the business rule to the decision in Arkansas not to charge any of the ATF officials who were involved in that raid on Brian Malinowski's home with any sort of crime in relation to Malinowski's death. Remember, Malinowski was shot and killed. His family says he believes burglars were breaking into his home. That's why he grabbed a gun. Instead, it was an ATF raid on his home because Brian Malinowski was suspected of being engaged in the business of selling firearms without a license. Why that needed a full tactical raid on his home, the agency hasn't really said. Steve Dettelbach hasn't really commented about that. Congress wants answers, but we know that at least in Arkansas, the ATF officials who conducted that raid will not be facing any criminal charges for the death of Brian Malinowski, and I suspect we'll talk a little bit about that with Pete on tomorrow's program as well. In the meantime, make sure you check out BearingArms.com throughout the day. We're keeping you up to date on all of the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation. And if you like what you see, I would encourage you to become a VIP or VIP Gold member. We're doing our weekly VIP Gold live chat today, as a matter of fact, 1:30 Eastern every Wednesday. Ed Morrissey's on vacation, but we're talking with David Strom from Hot Air. It's a great opportunity to kick around the top stories of the week. We love hanging out with our VIP Gold members. One of my favorite hours of the work week. I'd love for you to be a part of it too. And if you use the promo code SAVEAMERICA, you can get 50% off of your VIP or VIP Gold membership. Just go to BearingArms.com/subscribe to sign up. And again, thank you for your support. Look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.